this era of fake news, it's more important than ever to distinguish between fact and opinion. Look, I've just got to say it. This whole fact versus opinion thing has always seemed to me to be a mess. And here, I'm going to argue that the fact-opinion framework is an intellectual train wreck that has somehow crashed through our schools, our punditry, and even our pop culture. I'm going to try to convince you that fact versus opinion should be dropped from our cultural vocabulary immediately. School teachers, talking heads on TV, and countless videos on YouTube all seem to agree. You've got to separate fact from opinion. And it's always presented as something easy, the sort of thing everyone should be able to do. Hell, they teach fact versus opinion to second graders. But I say there's nothing easy about it. It's confusing. And the reason it's confusing is because the whole thing is a jumbled mess of sloppy thinking. Let's take a look at Pixar's Inside Out, reinforcing the standard fact-opinion message.
We made it! We're finally gonna get home!
Oh no, these facts and opinions look so similar.
Don't worry about it. Happens all the time.
Did you catch how Bing Bong throws all the opinions into the fact box? That's supposed to be funny, but I'm not sure I get it. I have opinions, and I think they're true. I bet you think your opinions are true too. If we didn't think they were true, then we wouldn't hold those opinions. And sure, we make mistakes, but at least some of our opinions have to be true. So what exactly is wrong with Bing Bong putting true opinions in the fact box? Maybe it's not enough to be true. A fact needs to be well supported. But first, I'd want to hear more about what's so wrong with using fact to just mean truth. And second, I'm pretty sure at least some of my true opinions are well supported. So again, I'm wondering why a true, well-supported opinion can't go in the fact box. Remember, we've been told ad nauseum it's important to separate fact from mere opinion. But what gives a fact this higher status? Well, not that it's true and well supported. If that were the criteria, then we'd have to allow opinions into the fact box. Now that was all pretty fast, so let's start over and begin at the beginning. What exactly is a fact? This time, let's go to BrainPOP.
Dear Tim and Moby, my dad says you can't trust everything you see on the news because they mix facts and opinions together. What does that mean? Sincerely, Lily. Thanks for writing in, Lily. A fact is a statement that can be proven true or false.
Stop right there. This is deeply puzzling. First, a fact is a statement. A statement, okay. But when we talk about facts, we're not always talking about statements. Think of the grizzled old drill sergeant barking out, "It's not the theory that matters, soldier, it's the facts on the ground." I don't think he means that statements win wars. He means something like the actual circumstances, or more plainly, the reality on the ground. We often use the word fact this way. It just means something like the way things are. We're not talking about statements. And look, Wikipedia agrees. A fact is an occurrence in the real world. Nothing about statements here, and nothing about proof. Take a moment to appreciate how surprising this is. You've been told that identifying a fact versus just an opinion is fundamental to critical thinking. Yet here are two popular mainstream sources of information giving us completely different answers as to what a fact is. Here's a photo of me fishing last summer at an undisclosed location in the High Sierra. No, I will not tell you where it is in the comment section. And let's keep this simple. There is a lake in front of me. Now let's inventory what we got here. A lake, me, a spatial relation between me and the lake, and a statement describing all this. Wikipedia says this arrangement out here in reality is the fact. BrainPOP says this linguistic entity is the fact. Two very different things. See how this whole fact-opinion business is a lot more complicated than advertised? Now I think Wikipedia basically got it right. But it doesn't really matter, because that definition is almost never used in the standard fact-opinion framework. Just look at the top two hits from DuckDuckGo. The Key Differences website calls a fact a proven truth, and Study.com says a statement that is true and can be verified objectively or proven. These are more in line with the BrainPOP definition, not Wikipedia. Can you spot a problem? What is this or false doing here? Do they really mean that if you can prove a statement true or false, then it's a fact? The moon is made of goat cheese. Can this be proven true or false? Yes, it can. Can you see how this definition almost makes it sound as if it's a fact? The moon is made of goat cheese? Is that what BrainPOP really intended to teach kids? Let's be fair. BrainPOP is made by creative types and media people, not philosophers. Maybe this is just a one-off mistake. But no, you can find this mistake all over the interwebs, including resources for teachers. You might think I'm being nitpicky and the or false doesn't really matter, but it does matter because it leads to silly stuff like this. From Quora, here's the top answer. In the way I use the words fact and opinion, no, they cannot. A fact is something that can be either objectively true or objectively false. The sun is made of goat cheese is a fact. It just happens to be a fact that is false. Sheesh, see what I mean about confusing? But I don't blame the person who gave this answer. The question was framed within the lousy fact-opinion framework. So already we were painted into a corner by this mistaken framework that's been drummed into us for years. Now, of course, this definition can easily be fixed. Just take out the or false. Okay, now the definition is basically the same as what we saw from the Key Differences site and study.com, so we're back on track. Unfortunately, this track only leads to more problems. First, does a statement have to actually be proven true? That's what Key Differences says. But BrainPOP and study.com say it's enough that it can be proven true. Which one is it? Because that's a big difference. And what does can be proven even mean? Let's say you and I are having coffee, and I mention I was born in New York. Now that's a fact. But I suppose if you were feeling churlish, you could say, prove it. Well, I can't prove it right then and there. So does that mean while we're in the coffee shop, it's not a fact that I was born in New York? After all, I can't prove it. Now someone might say, well, you can prove it. You just gotta go home and get the birth certificate. But what if my birth certificate has gone missing? You really telling me my place of birth is now mere opinion? Now I want to be fair-minded here. Maybe with some work we could eventually get a grip on what exactly can be proven means. But suffice it to say that this is complicated, and defenders of the fact-opinion paradigm have a lot of explaining to do. And how they'll explain it to second graders is beyond me. But it gets worse. It's not just this word that causes problems. What about this one? When it comes to facts, what counts as proof? Are we talking about a guaranteed conclusion here, like a mathematical deduction? If so, there is no such thing as a historical fact, no such thing as a medical fact, no scientific facts at all, because all these fields reach their conclusions probabilistically, never with full certainty. So I assume we're talking about a lesser kind of proof, something like having strong evidence, well supported or backed by good reasons. But do you see what just happened? Now we've circled back to where we started with Bing Bong and Joy on Pixar's train of thought. If a fact is just a true statement backed by strong evidence, then what stops my true, well-supported opinions from being facts? It's time to ask what exactly an opinion is. And I hate to tell you this, but the answer given by teachers, websites, and countless YouTube videos is even more sloppy than the definition of fact. I clipped this from a document that came up near the top of my search. I won't say where, but it's from an American university. Notice it makes the same mistake as BrainPOP, saying a fact can be proven true or false, but we're here for the definition of opinion. First, an opinion is a statement that expresses a feeling. Hoo boy, stop right there. So, true story. My young son recently lost his newly adopted puppy in a tragic accident, and we're all still pretty torn up about it. Yeah, this cute little guy is no longer with us. So believe me when I say, we're sad about Nico's death. Now this expresses a feeling. So in school, you'd be taught to underline this keyword here, and then label it opinion. But that's weird. I mean, one of the most obvious facts in our family life for the past week or so has been that we're sad about Nico's death. What do you mean it's only an opinion? And look at this. Opinions are neither true nor false. So it's not true that we're sad about Nico's death? This is all so odd, I'm not even sure what to say about it. Let's skip back up here. We're told an opinion can also just be a statement that expresses a belief. Well, here are two things I believe. Average recorded global temperatures have been trending upward. Barack Obama was born in the United States. Now I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to say these are just opinions. They're true, and they're well supported. Yeah, I believe them, But if just believing something makes it an opinion, well, I guess I can go with that. Fine, beliefs are opinions. But that means lots of opinions are facts, because I believe lots of facts, and I hope you do too. This was my earlier point with Inside Out. Remember when Joy says,
Oh, these facts and opinions look so similar.
well, maybe now we know why they look so similar. Because opinions are beliefs, and many beliefs are about facts. Can you see how jumbled this all is? And we're teaching it everywhere from elementary school to college. We're also told that an opinion expresses a value judgment. And here you might think that we finally have hit some solid ground. But I don't think so. Let me explain why. First, who decided that the interesting and difficult philosophical question of whether aesthetic value is objective can simply be defined away? A widely cited 2009 survey shows that only about a third of professional philosophers think aesthetic value is subjective. 41% accept or lean toward as being objective. There's obvious disagreement here. So why are schools teaching kids to put aesthetic value judgments in the mere opinion column? By definition. Here's an example. Glenn Gould's playing of the Goldberg variations is better than the average second grader's piano recital. This is classified as an opinion, of course, but I think it's a true value judgment, an obviously true value judgment, and there are good reasons for thinking so. So is it a fact or an opinion? Maybe in the end, you and I will just disagree about which column this belongs in. That's okay. But don't you think questions about what counts as a good piece of art is exactly the sort of question that should be hashed out carefully with philosophical arguments? This shouldn't be settled by definition. Of course, not all value judgments are aesthetic. Some are about moral questions. Maybe it was only moral values that were intended to be downgraded to mere opinion. But this is no better. In the same 2009 survey, over half of professional philosophers say they accept or lean toward moral realism. And if morality is real, then I don't see why we should shy away from accepting moral facts. Now again, maybe you disagree with moral realism. That's fine. As you can see, lots of philosophers do. But if there's significant disagreement about this, then why are moral judgments being defined into the mere opinion column? Can you see how it might be harmful to teach children from a young age that value judgments are just opinion? Consider this value judgment. It's wrong to carelessly destroy ecosystems. Look, I don't want to be dogmatic here. Maybe in some circumstances, harmful practices like strip mining and clear cutting can be justified. But thoughtlessly, unnecessarily destroying Earth and its creatures, that's wrong. And I myself have no trouble calling this a fact. But according to the fact-opinion framework, it's just mere opinion. No wonder there's so much moral confusion out there. School children are taught that value judgments like this have no grounding in reality. It's just opinion. Maybe you'll say, no, we never said value judgments like these are not grounded in reality. It's just that they cannot be proven. That's why they're opinion. But this just shows the definition of fact and opinion is messed up. If a value judgment like this is grounded in reality, why can't it be called a fact? Okay, perhaps this moral judgment cannot be proved scientifically, but it can be backed up with solid moral reasoning. So here again we see substantive philosophical questions being swept under the rug of definition. We need to think hard about what kinds of evidence count as good evidence. For example, say I had my morning coffee in a red cup, but there's no video of the event and no witnesses. The barista doesn't remember me at all. The only evidence available is that I remember it. So is it a fact that I had coffee in a red cup? I certainly can't prove it with empirical evidence. But there is good evidence. I remember a red cup. It would be strange for you to say, well, that's just your opinion. Scientific evidence or it never happened. Look, there's different kinds of evidence. And in this case, my memory of a red cup is perfectly legitimate evidence. Good evidence doesn't have to come from a scientific laboratory. So why are we shutting down discussion, through definition, about the kinds of evidence that might be relevant to value judgments like these? Sure, maybe these statements deserve to be called mere opinion, but maybe there's a reason to call them fact. Let's have that philosophical discussion, not silence it through definition. Okay, so you can tell I'm no fan of the fact-opinion framework, but if I'm going to be so critical, then it's my responsibility to address the very best case where the fact-opinion crowd might have it right, and that has to do with matters of taste. And here, I have in mind more literal examples, like this is ice cream versus this ice cream is delicious. We're told the first is a fact because it can be verified with empirical methods. We could run some tests to prove this bowl of awesomeness is not some kind of fraud, like frozen yogurt. The second, we're told, is just an opinion. Here I take it we have a paradigm example of fact versus opinion. So what's the problem? Well, first, even if this does work, it's just not the primary sort of case the fact-opinion crowd usually has in mind, like being a critical consumer of news. When a news host tells us homelessness is on the rise, and then goes on to say homelessness should be our top social political priority, those are two different kinds of claims. And that's the sort of difference the fact-opinion crowd is trying to warn us about. But this is not a matter of taste, is it? Second, even in matters of taste, the fact-opinion distinction is just not very helpful. Think about it. When someone says, this ice cream is delicious, they're saying something true. The ice cream molecules are interacting with their taste receptors in a way that activates the pleasure center of their brain. And not only is that true, but they have very good evidence for it. They're directly experiencing the deliciousness. So why do we downgrade this statement as somehow second-rate compared to this statement? Look, it's not as if I don't know what the fact-opinion crowd will say. People disagree about whether this ice cream is delicious. But here are three things to consider. First, is disagreement enough to stop something from being a fact? Think about it. If disagreement itself makes something mere opinion, we're essentially granting people the power to veto facts. Second, when people say, this ice cream is delicious, they typically just mean that it tastes good to them. So if you say it's not delicious, you're not really disagreeing with them, because all you mean is that it does not taste good to you. So you're both saying something true, and you both have excellent evidence. Direct, conscious experience. Third, do we really want to say there are no facts about matters of taste by definition? Isn't this a philosophical question that should be carefully considered before putting it in one column or the other? Change the example. This time, let's imagine Gordon Ramsay saying that beef Wellington, which is beef tenderloin slathered in pâté and wrapped in a buttery, flaky pastry, is better than Spam. And imagine that Gordon doesn't just mean that beef Wellington tastes better to him. He means that as a matter of objective reality, beef Wellington really is a superior cuisine to Spam. Now, I have done zero research in the philosophy of food, but I think it's at least an interesting question in what ways Gordon Ramsay might be correct. But even if you think that's absurd, don't you agree the question should not be settled by definition? Okay, so what should we conclude about all this? Well, it seems obvious that both fact and opinion are equivocal. They mean lots of different things in different contexts. That's why this fact-opinion framework is such a mess. Sometimes by fact, we mean an undisputed truth. Other times we just mean a true statement, whether it's disputed or not. Sometimes we mean a proven statement. And sometimes we don't mean a statement at all. We just mean something like reality or the way things are. Same goes for opinion. Sometimes we mean a belief that is not very well supported. Other times we just mean a belief, whether well supported or not. And sometimes we mean a belief that is subjective or a matter of taste. It's no wonder things get confusing when we reduce all this to a simple fact versus opinion binary. Anytime you attempt to say, a fact is this, but an opinion is that, you're bound to either ignore this rich complexity or produce a mishmash definition that slops all this together. That's why I think it's fair to call this the fact-opinion fiasco. At best, it's hopelessly confused. At worst, it's used to stifle honest debate. You've probably experienced this yourself. Ever tried to explain your view just to have someone shut you down with, well, that's just your opinion. So let's drop all this fact-opinion talk. But how should we think about it instead? Fortunately, I think the way forward is pretty clear. First, always clarify what exactly is being said. Language is full of ambiguity and vagueness, and you can't analyze a claim until you know what the claim is. Second, ask yourself, is the claim true or false? That's really the bottom line. Third, what justification is there for thinking the claim is true? This just means reasons. Now, reasons are complicated, and weighing up the reasons for and against a particular claim can be a long, difficult process. But the goal is to see whether the claim is justified or unjustified, or if you prefer, well-supported versus not well-supported. Fourth, Being a careful thinker comes down to a series of decisions about what to believe or disbelieve. Actually, that's not quite true. You can always just suspend belief, and often this will be exactly the right thing to do when the reasons for and against something are unclear. But roughly speaking, your beliefs should be guided by reasons. Like this. You hear a claim and decide it's well supported, which means it's probably true, and so you believe it. Or maybe you already believe something, but you decide to investigate whether it's really justified. Turns out it's not, so it's probably false, and you now disbelieve it. Or maybe it turns out the evidence is complicated, or it's not clear exactly what claim is being made. So you can't tell whether it's true or false, so you suspend belief. This is what critical thinking looks like, and none of it requires mention of fact or opinion.